What we do, mostly, Jill, is we teach people how to create quality rather than quantity in housing. How to build a Swiss watch of a house instead of a Chinese alarm clock. Something that's tiny and precious, and you can do it yourself, and you can look after it yourself, and you can pay for it yourself without having to go to work for 40 years and pay some awful bank to borrow the money to do it.
Sounds like liberation.
Well, it is. It's tremendous liberation. And so when we started doing this 15 years ago, we were aware of the difficulties that women were having at that time being able to pay for housing, and the discrepancies between men and women in income and so on. And initially we had to beat the bushes to find women who wanted to take a construction workshop, because they'd all been intimidated to the point where they thought they couldn't do this stuff. But that's changed. Things have changed tremendously in 15 years. And now about 60% of people who take workshops from us are women.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Empowering.
it's very empowering. Yeah, particularly the long professional workshops. They fill them up. And many of them are middle-aged. The old man split, or the kids are grown up. They've got this 4-bedroom monster they can't possibly afford to have, and they're trying to keep up the payments on it, but they can't see how they can get out, and they come and spend a week or two with us and go running away and build themselves a house. It's unbelievable, really.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And how did you get involved in this type of building?
Well, I was an architect. I was trained as an architect. I was also trained as an ecologist. And it's an unusual combination, unfortunately. Most architects have very little concept of ecology. And so for almost 30 years I've been doing ecological buildings, mostly helping other people make decisions about how their buildings should be. I've never been a contract builder, and I'm not even a very good builder, but I know a lot about buildings. And so about 15 years ago, Linda and I needed a home. We had run out of all the various shacks that we'd been living in for a long time. And we didn't have much money, and we had been at my parents' house in Wales and pedaling around the Welsh countryside on a pair of bicycles, and we ran into some ruined cob houses, and it got me thinking. And at that time I had no idea that there are 500,000 people who live in cob buildings in the United Kingdom. I thought they were an historical remnant of what had been there. So when we got back to Oregon, we sort of looked at each other and scratched our heads and felt very, very daring. Decided that we would try building a very tiny cob cottage to find out really what was wrong with cob and why it's not being used in the United States. And we thought what we were going to find was that it would melt in the rain, or be too cold in the snow, or blow away in the wind. But we lived in that house for 4 years, and in those 4 years it became clear that there was nothing physically wrong, that in many ways earth is an ideal building material for the Western United States. And of course it was. Some of the most durable buildings in California are built of earth. Some of the buildings we prize most, and we call it adobe, and we make it into little bricks and mortar them together. And cob is very similar to that, except the whole building is just one brick. You're hand molding the entire building to be a reinforced adobe structure. And you reinforce it by putting a lot of straw, a lot of long, strong straw into your mix, and then bonding each layer together so that the whole thing makes a fiber mineral composite mass. And it's extremely strong. And so in 1993, 12 years ago, Linda and I needed to move, and once again we needed a house. So once again we built a house, and this time we took care to offer some workshops as we were building. We thought we'll get some help on building our house, and maybe share this and get some more people involved. And all of a sudden, there was all this interest. And there were people, hundreds of people were coming to see us, and there were constant visitors, and the press was there, and people were writing articles and making videos and all sorts of stuff. We had no idea we were going to cause this sort of a furore. I don't know that we'd ever started. We were just building a house, yeah. And so we moved in, and it just kept going. It kept going, and it hasn't stopped.
So it's like you've just been riding the wave. It's like an idea whose time had come. And
Yeah, we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And so now here we are, 12 years later, we have about 2,000 alumni of the workshops we taught. In other words, there are 2,000 people empowered to actually go out and build a house. There are several dozen reasonably good instructors of Cob building in this country, and several in other countries. We've been working in Europe and Latin America and Australia, New Zealand. There's constant demand for us to be running all over the globe. The big book of Cob, the Hand-Sculpted House, that was published 2 years ago, is becoming a sort of standard for natural building all over the world, and just got translated into Russian. It's just been published in Kiev, and so they want us to go now and teach in Russia and Ukraine. And the Spanish edition is being translated right now in Argentina, so that'll lead to a spate of Cob buildings in Latin America. So somehow we got caught up by this wave, as you put it, yeah, and we're being carried along, and we're just trying to stay on the board at this point.
And it's an enjoyable ride.
Oh, it's a great ride. We're really having fun, as long as we can keep our balance.
It's so true.
Yeah.
And why do you think there's been such a resurgence or interest in this topic, and why there's so many people flocking to these classes and wanting to learn this at this point?
Well, you're a good interviewer. That's an excellent question, and I don't have a full answer to it. These are the best questions, because we've talked about it a lot. I'm thinking more and more that the world we live in is nonsensical, to the point where people can't see any sense in so many of the things that we're given. And so, they're surfing the web, or they're talking to a friend, and somebody says, "Have you heard about this Cob building stuff?" And they get on the web and look up Cob, and they find us. And it seems to make sense. And I know they're grasping at straws, and not all these people need to be building themselves houses, certainly, but they're looking for just something that makes sense in a world that's nonsensical. And so some of them come and they take workshops from us, and they'll never build a house, but they change their lives. They dump their lousy husband, they get rid of a bad job, they quit, they stop spending so much money, they move to a smaller building, they get their lives in order, they eat organic food. Major shifts happen as a result of being in contact with this movement.
Do you think that has to do with just not only being in, I think you're so amazing and your wonderful presence and your knowledge, but maybe also being in touch with the earth and something real and that speaks to our roots and, our center and who we are?
Yeah, I know it sounds trite, but there's a good reason we use the word grounded. Something I found recently, and I should have noticed this years ago, is if I get up in the morning, I'm kind of grouchy. If I take my shoes and socks off, I improve a whole lot. I wish I'd discovered that 30 years ago. I would have alienated a whole lot less people. But I think, getting your hands and feet in the dirt is really something primordial. I'm starting to think it's in our genetic memory. I think we've known how to do this for a very long time. And you'll see witness of that when tiny children get on the building site, because we encourage people to bring their kids to workshops, and sometimes we'll have children. We had a bunch of 3-year-olds here yesterday, and they were all doing just great. They were doing very competent work. They weren't playing. They were working, making Cob, making it into Cob loaves, and applying it to the building that we're doing very competently, and some of them were not yet 3.
Making mud pies was my favorite pastime.
Well, here we are again. Maybe it was for all of us who had access to mud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think so much, we spend so much of our time, I think you were saying this yesterday when you were talking in the class, just insulated from the outside world, like the building, our clothes, like your shoes and socks, the television, the cellular phone, we're kind of always connected to something else and not the earth.
Yeah. Well, we're probably the first couple of generations who haven't had active contact with nature on a daily basis. And so we're at a point now where we drive 3 hours to find a trail in the national forest and go looking at nature. Whereas our grandparents were involved in farming, logging, fishing, doing real things very often, where you're actively engaging in nature, not just looking at it as a spectator. So this is an opportunity to re-engage with nature without just being a bird watcher.
Great. And this is more of a practical question, but is there any place that in the world, I'm sure there are, that cob does not work as a building material? Or
yes. If you live on a small, recent volcanic island, there won't be any clay there. The same would be true of a coral atoll. If you live north of the Arctic Circle, it doesn't have enough insulation, and you'd probably want to build something like straw bales. If you live in the humid lowland tropics, it'll work fine as a construction material, but you need to remember to keep things open enough that you get breezes through your house. And that's about the extent of the limitations as far as I can see.
And if someone was listening to this interview and wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
Well, they could phone us. Our office phone is 541-942-2005. That's this year, 2005. That's 541-942-2005, and we're the Cob Cottage Company, although we're actually more like a theatre company than a business company. We're a group a small group of friends who really like one another, who put on public acts. So we call ourselves a company. The other thing you can do is get to our website. It's www.cobcottage, C-O-B cottage, one word, cobcottage.com. Very simple. And you'll find lists of the workshops we teach. There is one upcoming here in Santa Barbara County in about a week's time. Starts on the 2nd of April and runs for 10 days. And at the time of recording, we still have, I think, 3 or 4 places open in that. And then there will be workshops in Oregon later in the summer. You might also want to take a look at our latest book. It's called The Hand-Sculpted House. The Hand-Sculpted House. And I'm the primary author with Michael Smith and Linda Smiley. And you can get that from Cob Cottage Company at a discount by mail. Or you can go into your local public library and find it there, and you don't have to pay for it at all. I was trained to be a landscape architect and regional planner. I have a background in ecology. When I left graduate school, I went to Edinburgh University, which is sort of Ivy League in Britain, and got a brand spanking new fancy degree, which would be equivalent to a doctorate here or something like that. I went out and got a very high paying job with the British government, designing new towns and putting thousands of acres of tract homes all over the archetypal English countryside. And when I'd been doing that for a few years, I went home one night, and the woman with whom I lived, whom I'd been living with for quite a long time, greeted me at the door. And she said, "I need to talk to you." And I thought something was wrong with the plumbing, you know. But she took me inside and sat me down and poured tea, which she had ready for me. And she said, "I have been watching you coming home every night, and you are looking more and more like them. And I see you becoming the sort of person that you didn't like, and I've never liked, and I see you becoming a bureaucrat." She said, "I'm leaving, and I'm giving you the option of coming with me. If you want to stay doing this stuff, that's fine, but I'm not staying here. I'm going to South America. So I didn't think about it for very long because I was kind of shocked, but I really loved that woman, and still do. She's a wonderful woman. She's a great friend still. And so I quit. I quit my lousy job, but then I had no income. Anyway, we got on the road and left. And a long story, but it culminated in our going to Oregon for a weekend, and I've been there ever since. But of necessity, I had to find a way to make a living. I realized pretty soon that I didn't need the huge income that I'd had, and that I could actually live on the edges of society very happily, and needed almost no money. I was lucky in meeting a number of people who were very skilled at living without money, and they all seemed to be having a whale of a good time, so I was influenced by them. So my whole life changed, and I became much less of a consumer. I probably dropped my income 90%. And since then, I've always been self-employed. When I've worked as a university professor, for instance, I always consider to myself that I'm working for me, not for the university. And whether they pay me or not is somewhat irrelevant. Because if I'm not doing something that I really love, I shouldn't be there. So the test is, if they stop paying you tomorrow, would you still be there? And if the answer is yes, you're doing the right thing. And I found that's worked really well for the last 35 years.
And you said earlier that you feel like you have real wealth, but you're also saying that your income dropped 90%. How would you explain that to listeners?
Because I've been around long enough and chewed over this stuff enough to realize that wealth and money are complete opposites. That wealth is a state of mind that has to do with being satisfied with what you have. Money is a mechanism that our society uses to make you greedy. Once I understood that, my whole life got a lot better.
And would you describe to listeners where you live now and what your situation is like in Oregon?
I live with Linda, my wife, in a tiny house that we made out of the ground beneath our feet and the poles that grow in the woods. And we've lived there for 12 years. And my house has a composting toilet, which is separate from it and outdoors, and I actually like going outdoors to the toilet, and a shower in the garden, and that's very comfortable and enjoyable. And otherwise, it has what every house has. It has a place to sleep, a place to keep your clothes, a place to do what I call desking. You know, everybody knows what desking is, but we don't use the word much, so I'm introducing you to the word desking. I have a desking space. I have a place to prepare food, a little kitchenette, and what I call a loving room. Most people have a living room. We have a loving room. And our house is centrally heated by a fully efficient wood-burning rocket stove that we built ourselves, which heats 11 feet of built-in earthen bench. So we always have that heat day and night in the house. And the heat that otherwise would go up the chimney and heat the sky, in this case, is heating us. So we run our whole operation on almost no fuel. It's a passive solar building. It's made of cob. And we live in the rainforest on the wet side of the Cascade Mountains. We get a lot of rain, a lot of cloud, but the passive solar house really works well even there. So believe me, if you're living in anything other than the passive solar building in Santa Barbara, you need to do something different, because paying for utilities is for the birds. So that's the long and short of it. We grow quite a large organic garden. We don't buy vegetables or fruit, and we use a lot of them. We're basically vegetarian people who eat a lot of raw food. We grow most of it without much effort. It's pretty easy. We have a we have one car between us and Cob Cottage Company, and that's a 17-year-old half-ton pickup truck that constantly needs some sort of help, but that's all right. I have a standoff relationship with that pickup truck. Well, I try to keep it alive because that's what we should do with our elders, and this is definitely an elder truck. And we try our best not to spend money on frivolous things, particularly those made of plastic or anything that we don't have an immediate use for. And the things that we do in our lives, we try to do with as much quality as we can. People come to our place and they're horrified to see that I drink coffee. Not only that, I drink very expensive coffee. I try to buy the very best organic, shade-grown, ecologically grown coffee. And I don't drink more than about 4 cups a week, but I thoroughly enjoy them. So one of the things I've learned, Jill, is to do less things and do them with more quality, and make sure that every incident in my life is a special time in itself. There's nothing humdrum, there's nothing ordinary. I'm fully engaged with it, yes. Yeah. So no, I don't meditate. I don't go on long retreats in silence, but I live my daily life consciously. And learning to do that has been very satisfying to me. Well, you know, Jill, I have a wonderful life. I'm the first to admit it. I travel all over the world. I'm surrounded by lovely people all the time. Anytime the telephone rings, it's somebody who's enthusiastic and just bursting with excitement about having found natural building, or they're doing something for themselves. I'm very blessed. I have a wonderful life.
Well, it shows. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Leif Skogberg, and he's describing the bench that they're building.
Well, we got a good start on the foundation and the lower portion of the bench yesterday, and today we're going to build up the back so that people can lean against it and it'll be real comfy. And we're going to have a couple different layers, so over here it'll be a little bit higher and there'll be an armrest area.
Did you guys design this yourself?
Yeah, we all just kind of did a little bit of site analysis yesterday morning and kind of got a feeling for the space and how we wanted it to flow, and how we wanted the bench to be used and fit into the whole garden here. And so then we all just kind of came up with what would work best.
Great. It looks really great. And you're building it out of?
It's out of cob, and cob is a mixture of clay, soil, sand, and straw. So Ianto, the cob guru, is over here today, and he's kind of consulting, and Sean and I are kind of leading up the workshop. And then we used broken up concrete, broken up sidewalk for the foundation, just to keep drainage, and so when it rains, the cob doesn't get soaked with water and melt away. Yeah.
Hi, could you describe the Cob Bench? What's your name?
Carly.
Carly, could you describe the Cob Bench and what it looks like to our listeners?
It's basically in a really neat shape that kind of looks like a half a guitar. It looks quite comfortable. And there's a base of rocks, and it's kind of holy.
Holy as in religious, or?
No, it's in holes. It looks for drainage or some kind of purpose.
And what does it look like it's made of?
Mud and straw.
Do you plan on having a house one day made of sustainable materials?
I think I'd see how well this bench holds up and then maybe think about it later.
So can you just say your name and what you're doing here today?
My name is Betty, and I'm here in support of this wonderful project, the bench.
And have you been working on the bench, or have you done cob before, or how did you get involved with this?
I live in a cob house that I built, and I'm currently building a cob house for my mom.
And what is it like living in a cob house?
It's amazing. It's really, really wonderful.
What's the difference in, I'm sure you've lived in houses other than cob during your life, and what's the difference that you could think of, right off the bat?
I think that anyone that's ever gone into an earthen structure of any kind usually makes some sort of comment about either the peacefulness, the feeling, the acoustic quality, mostly it's just like being inside of the earth. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. It's very quiet and lovely and beautiful.
Did you help build the houses yourself?
I built the houses with the help of some friends and family, yeah.
How long did it take you?
My girlfriend and I built her house in 3 months. We worked hard.
And how many people did it take to build that house?
My girlfriend and myself. We had some help on the roof because that was a little tricky. But at the time we were living in tents in a very extreme environment. It was very windy and very cold in the winter, and very, very hot in the summer. And the tents are a great motivator to finish a house. And she designed it, and we built it, and it was fabulous.
So, and she designed it, just kind of drew out the plan, or had she experienced with that before, or no?
No, neither of us had any experience building at all, ever, or designing. And so, you know, we met some really great challenges, and were stretched to the limit in many, many ways, but it was wonderful.
And how did you get started in this type of building?
I was living in a tent, and I didn't like it.
And did you take a training or just read books, or?
I researched Cob, which at that point was 4 years ago, and no one in this area had heard of Cob at all. No one. And I scoured the library for anything on Cob. I don't know where even I had heard of Cob before. And I found an article that a woman had written, and it had the website for Cob Cottage Company, and I called them, and I scraped the money together to take a workshop, and I went up for 1 week and came back to near Eugene. Near Coos Bay is where the school is, and came back and built a house.
It's really impressive, Betty. It's amazing.
Anyone can do it.
And in building the house, did you build it out of clay and straw, and what were the materials used?
Cob is clay, sand, and straw, and water. And pretty much what you've seen or read about, we used broken up concrete as the foundation. Like I said, you know, we had no money to buy any materials, so the windows were all reclaimed from people who had remodeled. All the wooden beams, the doors, everything was free.
How much did it cost to build your house, if you don't mind me asking?
I think the biggest investment was on materials we needed for the roof. And I would say on the smaller house, we spent about $900, and on the bigger house, probably about maybe close to $2,000 just on the roof stuff.
So that is very, I mean, compared to Santa Barbara houses, which are millions and millions of dollars, that's pretty amazing.
There's a lot of free stuff out there to be had. Yeah, I mean, if we had to buy the windows and the doors and cement to pour a foundation, I imagine it would have been a great deal more expensive, but it was not.
And how did you go about finding that reclaimed material?
You know, you have to be careful, because once everyone knows you want stuff like that, you get phone calls every day. And we found that we could actually be very choosy about what we got. So now we're only taking just lovely antique doors and windows with wooden frames. And I can't even begin to tell you the things that we get for free. Huge wooden beams. People are happy to not take it to the dump. But, you know, they're remodeling. They want their new things, and they're happy to get rid of their old things.
Do you have anything else you want to say about building or your houses? Or?
I think that the only thing that I think is really important is that you don't have to build a house to create a space for yourself. And I know that coding, you know, getting permits and the way Santa Barbara building codes are is always the first question and the first issue that people are concerned with. But like today, we're seeing this bench being built, and it's a community project, and I'm sure that this bench is going to get a lot of use and a lot of people coming and being curious and seeing how it brought people together to do something really wonderful. I mean, it's an experience for these people that they won't forget. And you're seeing babies build, and you're seeing older people build, and everyone's happy. And that there's a lot of little things that people can do. I mean, I have an earthen oven that I've built at my home, and we've baked our Thanksgiving turkeys, every pie, cookie, cake, you know, everything that we need to bake, we bake in our earthen oven. And it was a pleasure to build, and it's a lovely, lovely piece of artwork, and it's functional. And I think that you can build very small, very wonderful spaces for yourself. It doesn't have to be a house. You know, people think if I'm going to learn Cob, I've got to build a house, and it doesn't have to be that way.
And how has your house stood up to rain and, you know, the heavy weather that we had, the heavy rains this year? How's it doing?
No problems at all. As a matter of fact, it went through that earthquake that we had that was in San Simeon. It was only a 6.2, and I was so excited because I was there that day, and the whole world was just rocking and rolling, and there was nothing, not a crack, not a flake, nothing, and I stood outside with my 10-year-old son and just watched the world moving up and down, literally. I thought the trees were going to fall over, and we had 3 structures up at that time, and there was just not a single crack anywhere, nothing. Yeah. And the rain is not a problem. I mean, you have to do your homework if you're going to build something that you're going to live in or spend time in. You don't want to have wet feet or a leaky roof. And if you get the help of someone who knows what they're doing and spend some time researching it, I mean, obviously you're not going to build something dangerous. So, no, I've not had any problems at all.
And are you doing this just for yourself, like personally, or are you doing this for other people now? Or
well, this journey has led me to be a teacher at the School of Natural Building. So I'll be teaching up there as one of the primary teachers in Coquille. And I'm very excited about that. It's just came out of the blue, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm working with a couple of schools here in Santa Barbara, building things with the children. We're doing a bread oven on one and some benches on another. And it's just a beginning. It's a good reason for people to come together and enjoy doing something.
to play in the mud?
To play in the mud, and it's okay. You don't get in trouble.
So say that I wanted to build a cob house, and I was in Santa Barbara. How would I contact you, like as a natural building teacher, or what would be the first step someone that is listening to this could do?
Each circumstance, I think, would be really different. It would depend on what your budget was, how much you planned on purchasing, how much you planned on scrounging, how many friends you have who wanted to help, how big you wanted to build, how much time you had to build. You could find someone like myself or one of many, many other students that have gone out and done their own thing. Leaf here has built a building here locally, and it just asks for direction and find where you wanted to go with it. Cob Cottage Company is a good way to go if you were to host a workshop. That is a big boost of working hands that come and they learn and then they leave and go build their places. And a workshop is a really enjoyable situation. People come together and you bond for life. I mean, you're doing something so noble, building a structure for somebody to live in. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, get muddy, be happy. Thank you.
What are you doing right now?
Well, I'm getting the mud the right consistency, and I'm taking out rocks and large sticks
What is this mud for?
to eventually make cob.
So this is what the cob, are they bricks or what are they?
That's a clay earth mixture.
And what is that going to happen to that clay earth mixture?
Well, that clay earth mixture is going to be added, some sand is going to be added to it, and some straw is going to be added to it, which will give it its structure and its strength.
So you're basically just clearing out anything that doesn't belong in the cob.
Exactly.
Why are you here at this workshop?
Well, we came, my daughter and I, and we came so she can play in the mud again. She's done this one other time. She helped with another workshop, and she helped make the cob bricks. And I don't know much about this, but she just loves working in the mud. So we came here for her to do that. And
So she brought you here.
Yeah, she did.
What's your name?
Catalina,
And what are you doing here today?
making a cob bench.
And do you like making cob things?
Uh-huh.
What do you like about it?
That I can play in the mud.
It feels really good, huh?
Uh-huh.
Yes, and I hear this is your second cob project.
Mhm.
What else did you do?
I made a house.
That is so cool. Wow. Well, it looks like I look at your clothes and they're covered in mud, so it looks like you've had a really good day here. How old are you?
4 and 11 months.
So your birthday's coming up?
Uh-huh.
And that's pretty amazing that you're 4 and 11 months old and you have already helped build 2 cob structures.
Uh-huh.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, what are you doing here at this workshop?
I'm just mixing the clay and trying to get any rocks and sticks out of it so it doesn't hurt our feet when we're mixing it.
Do you mix it with your feet?
Yeah, once you dump it out, this will need some more sand in it, so we'll dump some sand out on the tarp and then some clay, and then we'll just mix it all together with our feet, and then we'll add straw and mix that together with our feet, and then start making it into loaves or little cobs.
So basically, you take the sand and the clay and mix that up, then take out what isn't needed, and then you bring it over to the tarp and mix it with your feet.
Yep, yeah, exactly. You put it all on the tarp, and you kind of have a couple people that grab both ends, and it's a lot like working a loaf of bread, and turn it over itself, and then you just start mixing it up. And,
Is it an enjoyable process?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
How did you end up here? How did you hear about this workshop?
Well, I'm in the Biology 291 class here at City College, and so I've been attending all the lectures. So I went to the Ianto's talk on Thursday night, and that just led into this weekend. And Ianto's been great about encouraging women in particular, to do it. And because I had this concept of, I can't build a house, and that really has even kept me from trying. And this weekend, I see how it's really possible.
So I'm looking at the bench right now, and how long did it take for you guys to build this?
3 days. Yeah, we started on Friday, and every day we've had probably about 30 people out, and different people every day, and some that have stayed the whole time. And we've worked all day from about 10 o'clock until, it's supposed to end at 3, but it's so fun, we just keep going.
What is the next step in this bench being completed?
So right now, the workshop's kind of over, and probably stick around for another hour and just do the final sculpting of it, and we have to make sure the water flows out evenly, and that's what I'm doing right now. And we're working on a little sculpture over there to add some artistic ends into it. And so the next step's going to be just rounding up the materials to do the final plaster, which will go over top of it and really just make it a long-lasting creation.